And so it's going to record. So
Right.
welcome, Peace family. Thanks those who are in attendance right now and who are going to be watching this live. Today we have Marlee Dorsey, who is the founder and lead practitioner in Reviving Roots Therapy and Wellness. This sister works with mental health and a few other forms of therapy as well and wellness. And I just think that it is very, very crucial that we learn how to take care of ourselves as we move through these phases of protest. So I've asked her to come and share what does revolutionary self-care look like and how can we exercise it. And at this point, I want to thank you for being here and just let you go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, my name is Marlee Dorsey. I am the owner and therapist at Reviving Roots Therapy and Wellness. And I guess we'll just start by talking about so I would like to start talking a little bit about how stress affects your body and how trauma actually. And so I'm going to start by sharing my screen, which I just learned how to do.
Are you hearing that playback?
No, but it does say that my speaker is not working. Please check your connection. I don't know.
Mute yourself real quick if you can.
Okay. Okay, is it still like that? Can you hear me okay? Good, okay. All right. So I will start by talking about how trauma affects your body. And when I talk about trauma, trauma response is just the way that your body responds to any kind of threat. And so we'll start there. And the reason that we'll, talk about that is because I think a lot of times when we think about self-care, we talk about, it kind of feels like it's like a luxury, like you're going to the spa or you're taking a bath with flowers and all of these things. And it doesn't feel like something that is attainable. It doesn't feel like it's something that's realistic. And with like the time that you have, the energy you have, when we talk about self-care, it feels like, yeah, I've just heard a lot of people say, I don't got time to, be going to get massages or, doing all these luxurious things. But self-care is really just the way that we take care of our bodies so that we can continue to do the work that we need to do in order to, support our families, support our communities, to protest and to share, our outrage around the things that are going on in the world today and that have been going on. And so when I talk about self-care, I want to make sure to just make sure that people have this understanding that this is not a luxury. Self-care is the way that we take care of ourselves so that we can live and so that we can prosper, so that we can go from just surviving to thriving in this world. So again, I'm going to go to talk a little bit about how self-care affects, or how stress affects our bodies. Okay. And so hopefully you guys can all see this. So our bodies have, our nervous systems have two parts. And if we think about our nervous system is just, you know, the part of our body that controls how we respond to things. And so for this case, I'm just going to say we have a hot and a cool system. The hot system responds to perceived threat. Any social threat, any physical threat, any emotional threat, our bodies experience threat in the exact same way. And so the hot system is responsible for threat, and the cool system is responsible for taking care of you after you have responded to that threat. It brings you down to that more cool part of yourself. And so when we talk about the hot system, there's increased heart rate. Your appetite is going to change, because if you imagine that you are, you know, there's a wolf coming at you, you don't really need to be worried about eating or sleeping or anything like that when a wolf is coming at you. Your heart rate goes faster because it needs that energy to start pumping. You might experience anger, because again, anger is really necessary when you feel like you need to protect yourself. There'll be like muscle tension, and that's kind of the biggest part of the hot system, is that your muscles are tense because they're getting ready to protect yourself. You know, if you gotta fight somebody, if you gotta, you know, yell, if you gotta, you know, do anything like that, your muscles are gonna be tense. In addition, there's sometimes your body responds by numbing itself, because if it's hard to get away, if it's hard to fight, if you have to survive that situation, then emotionally numbing and physically numbing is a way that your body says, okay, we can get through this experience if we don't feel this experience right now. It might be hard to think about the future because you're very focused on, you know, again, this wolf is coming at me, I need to focus on this wolf. And so your thoughts are very focused on, you know, the perceived threat. And actually you're like visually, you don't have, it's hard to have peripheral vision if your hot system is working, because again, your vision needs to be focused on that perceived threat. It's hard to, when the hot system is working, it's also hard to self-reflect. You got to make quick decisions. You know, sometimes you make decisions and then later on you're thinking back like, why did I do that? All of these responses are just ways that your hot system and your nervous system is working to protect your body. I think the final thing, or the other thing about muscle tension when you think about your hot system working and protecting yourself, is if you can imagine like when you get cut. When you get cut, there's inflammation. And at the same times that your body responds to physical threat in the same way that it responds to social threat. So in the same way that there's inflammation when you've gotten cut, there might be inflammation, you know, in your shoulders. That's why we get knots in our shoulders like I have right now, or, you know, inflammation in our organs, inflammation in our joints, you know. Stress can affect all of those things. So stress is attached to a lot of autoimmune disorders, lower levels of insulin, so like diabetes, things like that. And I want to point out too, if I'm going too fast or if anyone has any questions, please send them in the chat. Because I don't want to go further than, feels necessary. But I don't see anything in there now, so I'm going to keep going. So I just wanted to point out that, these behaviors aren't bad. Being angry, being defensive, being reactive, feeling like you need to focus on yourself, having trouble sleeping, freezing sometimes. All of these things are your body's way of protecting itself. It's just that sometimes when there's a difference between a perceived threat and a real threat, and it's hard to know the difference. And so, all of these ways of being are just ways that our body is trying to protect ourselves. So if the hot system responds to threat or perceived threat, then the cool system is the thing that brings you down after you have experienced a threat or after you've dealt with it.
So can I quickly jump in and ask, are you kind of describing that fight or flight kind of sensation when confronted with unmapped territory?
Yes, definitely. So, I think a lot of times we talk about fight or flight, but there's also freeze. And these are all just different response to stress. And so, it's like you're ready to do, like you're ready to be stuck. And so, yeah. I'm going to try. So the response. Another one that people talk about, which I'm not sure has like scientific lessons, is fun. And fun means, times where you like care these folks in order to make sure that they're safe.
We're currently experiencing some technical difficulties in our sound systems at the moment. I want to confirm if everybody can hear me clear. Can you hear me clearly? Coach Candice,
okay.
Can you also hear Marlee clearly?
Can you hear me now?
I can. Okay, I'm gonna try to mute myself.
And now it's okay. Let me see. Okay. Well, I guess I'll keep going until there's a problem again. I don't know. That's so weird.
You see by next to the mic the delta next to the mic.
Try this.
Try to select a different microphone.
Okay, hello?
I hear you way better.
Way better?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Let's hope that's okay. All right. So where was I? Oh, so the question, yeah. Does it feel like I answered the question? I don't know who asked it.
Well, when you started to answer it, it started getting
Started
choppy. So I'll
choppy.
just re-ask it if that's okay.
Okay.
So what you were describing was really the hot the hot system is like your fight or flight,
Yeah.
and you were talking about freeze, and that's as far as we got, I believe.
Okay. So freeze is one of those times where you get stuck. Like maybe you like don't feel any type of emotions. You just kind of feel like you're numb, or you feel like you are not completely connected, with each other. Sometimes it feels like you might be wishing yourself to things. Um, yeah. So sometimes I feel like you're watching yourself um, to like do things. Oh, that's shocking.
I don't think they want you to answer that one.
I guess not.
Maybe let me try to just keep my mic on also and just be quiet because I'm over here like yes.
Okay, well, hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, there's this. It says the speaker's not working, but I've been doing this. All I do is telehealth every day, and it works. So I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I'll try to answer it again. If you guys can hear me, can you hear me now?
Real clear.
Okay, cool. So freeze is when you start to feel numb. Um, and or it feels like you're watching yourself do things, um, or it feels like you're not connected, like your mind and your body are not connected with one another. So one really good example is when I pick up my phone and I'm looking at my phone for, ever, for like a half an hour. Didn't even know how long I've been looking at it. Um, but that's kind of a part of that freeze, that dissociation experience. Um,
So
and then
how would that look in a protest type situation? I want to kind of draw it back to
mhm,
the protest because we want to really know, like, dig in deep to like self-care for those who choose to go out and be on the front lines
mhm,
protesting and things.
mhm.
So would
So
that like be a situation like, say, the police starts engaging? I don't know. I'm just trying to make a drawback.
yeah, so when I think about protesting, that is a stressful situation, and there are threats everywhere. And so, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling defensive, when you're feeling, um, like you need to protect yourself, um, that's kind of the response that you get. That freeze, I'd imagine, in a protest could be, when you feel like sometimes it feels like your body just literally can't move, like you feel stuck. Um, or sometimes it feels like maybe you're talking, you're acting, you're doing all of these things, but your mind doesn't feel really connected um,
Huh.
with the things that you're doing.
It
Um,
reminds me of a post that I recently saw with a young protester getting yelled at
Mhm.
And I watched the video, and she like stared the guy down.
Yeah. Yep. That could be that could definitely be the freeze. Um, because yeah, that's threat coming at you. And then yeah, all you can do is just kind of stare. But even that is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that's the
That was
thing,
sensational.
right? So that's the thing I think is important for people to know too, is that, again, you have these responses to stress, but that doesn't mean that they're bad responses. I think that a lot of times people look back on the things that their bodies did while they're under stress and they feel regret, or they feel, I don't know, some kind of like sadness around it. But it's a valuable, um, like your nervous system is helping you. It's a valuable tool to have. Okay. Any other questions before I keep going?
I don't see none in the chat box. I'll check Facebook quick.
Okay.
None in my first watch party.
Okay.
All right, you got it.
All right. So we talked about the hot system. Now we talk about the cool. The cool system is the part of the thing that comes up when it's trying to bring you back down after you have dealt with the threat. Um, so the cool system, you're eating better, you're sleeping better, you can experience pleasure, because when you're in the hot system, it's hard to experience pleasure when you're like dealing with a threat. Your heart rate is cool, blood pressure is cool, better circulation, your body is relaxed, the muscles in your body are relaxed. Um, you have that peripheral vision, you have the ability to think more abstract thoughts, there's more options for acting. You have that wider perspective. And you have an increased ability to reflect. You're sleeping better. And yeah, you can think about the consequences of your actions. When you're in the hot system, you're really only focused on that moment. But the cool system, you can think about, okay, after this moment, how am I going to be affected by my actions going forward? And so your ability to come back. So let's go to the next one. So the idea, the hope, is that when you experience stress, so like if you look at this lower level, this lower line on the bottom, if that's the baseline level of tolerance for stress that you have, like the lowest amount of stress that you have, and this top line is the highest amount of tolerance that you have for stress. The idea, the hope, is that you start, at that lower level. You have to deal with something, somebody's looking at you funny or whatever. You deal with that, and then you kind of come back down. Or, you go to the protests, you're very aware of all of the stressors that are happening for you, and then you go back down, and you go back home, you're chill, you're relaxed, and you kind of go up and down like that. Unfortunately, that's just not how life works. We have a lot of stress, and there's not a lot of opportunity for us to come back down. So then, things kind of happen like this. You deal with a little bit of stress, but then you weren't able to come back down. And then each time you experience stress, it's kind of building on one another. So each little experience is piling on until you get to a point where you're past your level of tolerance. And when you're past your level of tolerance, that's when you're kind of living in this hot zone. And so, all of the things, you know, that we talked about from the hot system are your experience on a regular basis when it's not necessary anymore, when the moment has passed. So, for instance, you go to a protest, you've dealt with the stress of being in the protest. You know, you've gotten your anger out, you've gotten, you know, your point across, you've done everything you need to do. But then afterwards, it's hard to come back down. It's hard to relax after that. It's hard to feel like you can connect with people after that, because you're living in this hot zone. And so the reason that we practice self-care is so that when we find ourselves living in this hot zone, we can bring ourselves back to that kind of ideal way of being. We can go back to that really strong level of calm so
What
that
are
we have
the
enough energy
exercises
to
we
come
can,
back.
what
Huh?
are the exercises that we can do to identify whether we're acting in hot or cool?
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I think is really important is to just notice how your body feels at any given moment, you know, whenever you remember to do it, just noticing how your body feels. If it's, you know, what sensations do you feel? What temperatures do you feel? Is there like a heat? If there's tension or tightness in any part of your body, if it feels like you have a lot of energy built up. A lot of times in our chests, we feel a lot of energy, or our hands, we feel like, you know, you get kind of fidgety. And so noticing your body, noticing your thoughts. You know, are you having a lot of, you know, negative thoughts towards people? And then noticing like how you behave. And when I talk about how you behave, like, you know, are you lashing out at people that you don't need to be lashing out at? Do you feel really tired? Do you want to just, you know, lay out and not do anything for a little while? Or do you have energy? And how do you notice in your body that you have this energy? And so, yeah, when you just kind of check in with your body, even just doing like a, you know, just a short body scan, just noticing from the top of your head to, you know, the soles of your feet, what do you notice in your body? That is helpful to kind of figure out what you can do in order to like bring yourself down if it feels like you need to bring yourself down.
And what will be a reason to bring yourself down, and what will be like an exercise to do that?
Mm-hmm. So maybe a reason to bring yourself down is that you just snapped on somebody that didn't deserve it. Or, you know, you have, um, I don't know, you're finding yourself running low on energy. Like it's hard to,
Anxious.
yeah, you feel anxious. Or sometimes you feel, you know, like you have absolutely no energy because, you know, one of the things that happens when you get stressed is you kind of go back and forth between needing to do everything and like being really anxious and then having no energy and feeling that fatigue. And when you kind of see yourself going back and forth between those, I think that's one of the times where you really should kind of check in with yourself. And maybe an activity for you to just kind of bring yourself down is to, there's a breathing technique. It's 4, 7, and 8. Just remember 4, 7, 8. So you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, and then you breathe out for 8. And you know, the counts don't have to be, you know, any particular tempo or anything, but they do need to be the same count, you know, each time. 4, 7, 8. The other thing that I would really suggest that people do is to create like a self-care plan. Because when you're stressed, you're not really, like I said, you're not thinking about the wider perspective. It's hard to remember the things that you know are good for you. And when I talk about a self-care plan, it's taking note of your the things that help your mind, the things that might help your body, and the things that you know help your spirit.
What will be in that self-care bag? Like,
so I have a few examples, and I think it would be good too. And these are just, you know, some examples from, you know, things that I do. But I think when you can tailor it to your own, you know, the things that make you feel good, I think that's the best way to go. So for for the self-care plan, a few ideas is, you know, for your mind, you know, reading a book, taking a mental break, you know, taking a break from work, taking a break from protesting, taking a break from having these conversations about how racism and systemic oppression are affecting our lives. Because a lot of times, even those conversations, you're being aware of the threat that's coming at you. You're very aware of, you know, all the systemic oppression. And when you talk about it, you identify all these points, it gets really stressful because, and a lot of times it makes you feel hopeless because this is a really big, issue. And so if you're talking about it while you're stressed, then you're only going to see this much. You're only going to see that, you know, that small amount. When you can widen your perspective, you can only widen your perspective when you kind of brought yourself back to that calm, that sense of calm. Meditating. When I talk about meditating and mindfulness, meditation is generally that experience of, because I think a lot of people confuse the two, but meditation is, you know, taking a seat, sitting down, trying to like clear your mind and be aware of what's going on in your mind and your body, and just noticing them mindfully. But another idea is just to practice just mindfulness. And mindfulness is this idea of noticing your experience in the present moment, with compassion and with no judgment. So if I notice that I have a thought, whatever the thought is, I'm just noticing I have the thought. I'm not judging myself for having the thought. I'm not, you know, shaming myself for having the thought. I just notice that that's my experience. Mindfulness might also look like noticing like the experiences outside of your mind and your body. Like noticing, you know, what's in the room. If you pick a color, you say I pick red, then, you know, I can say I notice my red flower right there. I notice my red broom right there. I notice my red shirt over there. And so it kind of, that practice of mindfulness kind of brings you into the space that you're in, to be aware, again, like I said, in the present moment, as it's happening, with compassion and no judgment. So I'm not looking at this red flower and being like, oh, I need to clean that. And if I do, then I'm gonna just notice that I have that thought and not shame myself for shaming myself, because that can be a spiral as well. And one other way of being aware of your body and noticing your mind and taking care of your mind is journaling. Just kind of being aware of the thoughts that are coming out of your brain, and writing them down. Because a lot of times we have the same thoughts running around in our brain over and over and over again, same words and everything. And when we can get them out, we can make space for other thoughts and other words. So that's a few ideas for your self-care plan for your mind. A few ideas for your body are like the basics: eating, sleeping, and exercise. You know, how often are you eating? How and what types of things are you putting into your body? Just being aware of those things. When you find yourself having a lot of energy after a protest or after any kind of like strong conversation, strong dialogue around social justice work, I really suggest being aware of your breath. And, you know, maybe doing that 4-7-8 exercise, or even just noticing, just, you know, taking 5 deep breaths. And when I say deep breaths, I mean, a lot of times we breathe through our chest. What we want to do is try to breathe through our stomach, like right under your solar plex.
Okay.
Yep.
Listen.
Yep.
I've always been told to breathe through my stomach, but how do you do that?
So breathing through your stomach, if you put your hand on like right under your chest, if you can practice that, put your hand right under your chest.
Okay.
And you know the space where it feels like if you hit it, you might like, it'll knock the wind out of you.
Right. Oh, so like that little triangle?
Yep.
Okay.
So when you notice, when you're taking your breath, take a deep breath and see if you can breathe into that space.
When you're taking your deep breath, do you go through your nose or your mouth?
In through your nose and out through your mouth. And see if you can relax your shoulders. And when you breathe in, you're breathing in through your chest. And see if you can just send that energy down. Do you feel your stomach rise? Not your low stomach, but right under your chest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
People talk about breathing in your stomach, but it's right under your chest. It's not like your belly, like your gut. It's right under your chest.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you take those deep breaths, you do that. Sleeping, trying to sleep, and trying to get that 8 hours of sleep is going to be important. And drinking water regularly. I know these things sound, basic, but that is, basic self-care. The other things that I didn't put in here, like, hygiene things, like taking a shower, and, changing your clothes. I know during quarantine, maybe it's, now I think things have changed, but quarantine, sometimes people have a hard time doing that. But yeah, taking care of your body in those ways and making sure that you're moving. And I know if you're protesting, you're definitely moving. But sometimes, finding ways to get those feelings out, because walking is cool, but sometimes maybe you need a little bit more high energy. I personally like to hit a heavy bag, or, do some jumping jacks in the morning just to like get my day started. And if, you're into yoga is a really good way of connecting your mind and your body. And even if it's just like a short practice, it's really, really helpful. I found it helpful, and a lot of people have. So those are a few ideas for your self-care plan for your body. And then finally, your spirit. And I think I put yoga in here twice. But when I think about your spirit, is more about your sense of connection with yourself and with other people. And so if that means listening to a really good song that, makes you feel like you're connected with yourself, connecting with people who you love and love you, even if it's just for a short amount of time. Again, practicing yoga is one of those that connects your mind and your body together. And then maybe, guided meditation or just practicing mindfulness. There are a few apps. I think there's an app called Liberation. It's an app that's created by people of color that offers guided meditation and mindfulness activities. So that would be a really good option. So, the self-care plan should include all of those things that help your mind, that engage your body, and that engage your spirit, things that make you feel good. And I think that's kind of what I have. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, I'm open to that now.
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What was the meditation app called that you just recommended?
I'm pretty sure it's called Liberation or Liberate. I'm gonna look it up now.
I use an app called Breathe, and it kind of it's free, and it takes me through like some of those breathing techniques and holding your breath for like 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds. And then it gives you kind of like affirmation of the day.
That's nice. And yeah, that app was called Liberate. So we got Breathe, we got Liberate, and then there's another one called Headspace. And I don't know, they're offering it for free for mental health professionals and people who are currently unemployed. And Headspace is also a really good app that does guided meditation and guided like movement as well. Like if you're doing a workout, it'll guide you through like a mindful workout.
Calm is also a good app.
Calm?
Yes.
Calm. Okay. So yeah, we got a few options.
And I'll also be adding those in. I'll be adding a reference page for those apps in the summarizations.
Okay.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, do you have? I got a couple questions actually.
Okay.
So I want you to talk about the importance of balancing all three, like your body, your mind, and your spirit, and how life can be really hectic when they're not in balance.
I think a lot of times, or like the culture that we live in, it kind of reinforces this belief that we need to be productive all the time. I don't know if it seems like it's tied to capitalism, but there's this feeling like we have to be productive all the time, and that can make it really hard to be in connection with our mind, our body, and our spirit. I think balancing them all is one thing, but I think the more important thing is to be in connection with all of them. Because if you're, they're throwing out signs to us all the time, if we're having a certain type of thought, or we're having a certain pain, like I have pains in my shoulders right now from all of this stuff. But I think the culture that we live in, it kind of makes it so that it rewards us for ignoring our physical and our emotional experiences. And so the more that we can be in connection with those experiences and feed them when they need it, like if my shoulders are tight, then I need a stretch. Or, I need to do something. If I feel like I have low energy, then I probably need to go work out. If I am feeling sad, or lonely, then I need to reach out to a person. Our bodies and our minds, our emotional experiences are just giving us signs of what we need. And we should listen to them. But I think, the biggest thing is just being in connection with them. And so that's why, I wanted to reiterate, like, anytime you can, just like checking in with yourself and asking yourself, even if it has to be out loud, like, okay, how are we doing right now? How are we feeling right now? And if we got to answer ourselves too, people say if you answer yourself, you crazy or whatever, but hey, it's helpful. So yeah, I would say that's that's the most important thing. Any other questions from anyone? Oh, the other thing is that I think I sent it to you. There's like a self-care plan. So if anyone wants to do a self-care plan for themselves on their own, I have a little worksheet for that as well.
Yep. So that'll also be in the digital care pack
Okay.
that we send to everybody that signs up. So how can people start figuring, how do you find the right type of wellness and therapy that you need? Because say you may feel like you are physically well, but you may have some emotional needs that need to be attended to, but it's not necessarily mental.
I would say, and so when you say like finding so maybe that's about like being connected with yourself again, just knowing what you need. Because what I'm hearing from you is like, physically you're taking care of yourself, but maybe emotionally you need some processing or some work to be done. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, just kind of taking stock of that. Like, what is it that feels important for me right now? I think therapy a lot of times can be one of those spaces where you can just do that assessment. For mental health professionals, like that's a part of our assessment, is to look at like the whole person. So being aware of physical health, checking in with like emotional well-being, checking in with how you're thinking about things, and your relationships. Relationships are a really big part of like the work that we do. And then whatever you see, is a need, then attending to that. If you need, to work out, maybe getting like a trainer or like joining a gym and getting connected in that way. For emotional well-being, therapy is really good. But so for some people, therapy is not accessible. So, maybe it's connecting with a friend, maybe it's following, a therapist on Instagram or on social media and just kind of taking in some information that way. Or maybe it's, joining a group where the focus is on self-care like this one. But yeah, I think, just kind of doing an assessment that's kind of part of that, like checking in with yourself, like how am I doing right now, and where can I get some more assistance.
Okay, I'll give you a situation just because we got a couple more minutes, and this may never be raised again in this way.
Okay.
So say on top of all the world's chaos, you find yourself in a relationship that is emotionally laboring.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be intimate relationship, that could be parental relationship, that could be friendships. How do you protect yourself from being free emotional labor?
Mm-hmm.
And what is emotional labor?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, emotional labor is the work that we put into like being in connection with people. Um, Emotional labor is also like the energy that you're using in order to deal with people's emotions that maybe they are not completely aware of. And so when I think of emotional labor, I think of like uh, I had a boss that would never that just was not very, they were very hot-headed. They felt like everything was like, every thought that they had was true and real. And then the emotional labor was like kind of navigating that interaction in order to make sure that, you know, my job is safe, that, you know, this relationship is safe. And so when you find yourself, you know, or, you know, even just kind of listening to people, and reflecting their thoughts and their emotions, that's emotional labor. And so I think when you're talking about being in relationship with people, especially with all this stuff going on, it might be helpful to notice, again, checking in with yourself when boundaries have been crossed, when you are like doing work that you don't have the energy to do right now. You know, maybe you have a lot of stuff going on, and you know, you don't have the space or the energy or the time to have like that kind of conversation with a person, or to show up for a person in that way. Or maybe your boundaries, so that makes me think of boundaries. So there can be time boundaries, you know, like, okay, I can only speak with you, or, you know, spend this much time with you. There can be like content boundaries. So maybe you know, there are certain things that you're not comfortable talking about with that person. Maybe there are like, you know, boundaries with where you interact with a person. You know, maybe you don't go to that person's house because you're not comfortable doing that. Maybe you just meet in like a, you know, a common space, common area. But whatever it is, whatever relationship you have with a person, there are boundaries, whether they're, you know, spoken or unspoken. And if you can be aware of what boundaries you need to have in order to like maintain your own care for yourself, then that's, you know, that's what is gonna have to be done.
Period.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah,
know,
that
your boundaries change every once in a while. Maybe you can talk to this person for an hour, where, you know, when you're really tired, you can only talk to them for 10 minutes. But communicating those boundaries, I guess, is what's going to be important too.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just having them and then not telling the other person, because that usually doesn't work out very well.
Well, it's about that time. I want to extend deep gratitude towards you and your practice in raising this awareness and providing this this leadership in revolutionary self-care and being aware of your your body's love language, so to say, how to properly care for oneself. And I want to just raise the awareness that revolution is self-care. When you are able to properly be balanced, you're able to be more effective externally. When your house is right, everything you do is with thought and strategy and intention. So I just want to extend deep gratitude and appreciation that you took your time to be a buffer for our intergenerational leadership gaps.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for putting this on. This is, yeah, again, a really good idea for what's going on right now. This is necessary.
And with that, thanks all the audience that has checked in, and those who are registered will be able to get those exercises and the template for the self-care plan. So check your emails within about a couple of days. Peace.
Adios.